Hello fellow bin raiders! Recently I've been looking to focus more on the development side of indie games and mods on my channel. With that in mind, I'm here with Meta, one of the 3 project leads of Fallout 4 New Vegas. Touted as a recreation of Obsidian Entertainment's Fallout New Vegas in the Fallout 4 creation engine, I'm eager to get his insight on the project, modding in general, and ask some questions posed by the community. Meta, I'd like to thank you for agreeing to this interview.
Hey, no problem.
So, first question, where did the idea for this project come from? Why New Vegas and why not Fallout 3? Is the team a big fan of New Vegas?
Well, I mean, I suppose you'd go for the really low-hanging answer and say another team's already doing it, but realistically, I think what it comes down to is everybody on the team has a whole lot of love for the original game. At the end of the day, you look at everybody and you see just a certain kind of affection and a lot of fond memories and fond criticisms of things that they just really got attached to with it.
So the mods DB page that you have, linked in the video description below if you guys want to check it out, states that you're aiming to include all the original quests, story and content, and that's quite a task. Had you always aimed to create the entire game, or were your early plans more of a small section of the map as sort of proof of concept?
Well, there was another project before us, and they had some issues with scope. That project started, I believe anyway, about early last year, and they ended up coming apart, but throughout the process of their development, they started out working on just small items that, you know, they wanted to add to Fallout 4 from New Vegas, and by the end of it, they were working towards a complete recreation. That didn't work out for them, and because of a number of issues, the team kind of fell apart. We picked up the pieces after that, and that's when we started, and from day one, our goal has been to recreate the entirety of the game. Now, we're taking a piecemeal approach to this, and we're starting with smaller proof-of-concept regions, but because of the modular nature of developing with the creation engine, this means that further down the line, we're going to have assets that will make development far easier for us.
Okay, so in that regard, Fallout New Vegas, in my opinion, had some of the best DLC of the 3D Fallout franchise. Are there any plans to mod the DLC packs such as Honest Arts? Personally, I'd love to see Zion Canyon in the Fallout 4 engine. It was a wonderful place in the original game, and I think it looked great in the new one.
Well, we have no specific plans for remaking the DLC right now, and really the reasoning for that comes down to we have an entire game already on our plates. Now, that said, I can tell you for a fact that some of our level designers are really itching at the bit to get their hands on dead money because, man, can you imagine the Sierra Madre with the lighting Fallout 4 has?
And all sorts of like the fog effects and the holograms, it would be incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be really good. Well, we can hope for that in the future. Again, your scope is quite large at the moment, so I guess we'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah.
What can we expect from Fallout 4 New Vegas? Will the reputation system return from Fallout New Vegas, and what about the hardcore mode?
Reputation is back in game. It's fully functional as of right now. In fact, we put a video out, it would have been almost 2 weeks ago now, actually showcasing a tiny little sneak preview of that in action. As well, hardcore mode is being worked on. Balancing it is not really a focus right now, but we are poking away at getting the various systems, and we're also playing with some of the really cool stuff that Fallout 4 did with their own survival mode, because we think there's a lot of really great ideas in there.
So you're sort of mixing the old style and the new style to create something that's a bit more up-to-date than the old one was.
Definitely. Fallout 4, a lot of people will criticize it and they'll say, you know, it was a terrible game, it wasn't a good game. I would beg to disagree. I think Fallout 4, like any other game, has its flaws and it's a matter of compromise. But the systems in that game, some of them are absolutely brilliant. So us being able to take those and merge them with New Vegas, especially where New Vegas had some more, let's say, prototypical takes on those ideas that weren't really as well implemented, that gives us some serious ground to work with and gives us a chance to create something very polished.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think the folly of Fallout 4 for a lot of people is that it was lacking a lot in the content compared to Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, which was stuffed with sort of guns and quests and things to collect and to do and to see. And Fallout 4 was a bit I thought, quite thinner on that. Are you guys looking to add anything new to the game that wasn't in the original? You've touched on it with the updated reputation system from Fallout 4 into New Vegas, but is there anything else specifically that comes to mind?
We're doing tiny things. Scope is key for this project, and in fact, one of my core roles with the team is making sure that we stay within our scope, but at the same time, we have a lot of very creative folks on the team, and these people are all just incredibly skilled. So they're going to sit down, and someone will just knock out in an afternoon something brand new and say, hey guys, I made this cool thing, can we use it? And at that point, you know, it's hard to say no if it's already there and made. A good example is, a number of weeks ago, we showcased for the first time a bow. We're going to be giving bows to the Legion, actually, and we're going to be using that to supplement the lackluster survival skill from New Vegas. We're going to be doing other similar tiny tweaks. Another big thing we're going to be doing is locations will likely be adjusted and changed. Basically, our philosophy is that this is a remake, not a remaster. A remaster, you know, you sit down, you make everything one-to-one, and then you say, okay, we're done. The problem is New Vegas isn't that old of a game, and there are some really great mods that really bring it up to a modern standard. We don't need to compete with that, we don't want to compete with that. We'd instead like to make something that is a little bit our own, so we will be adding things here and there where we feel it's appropriate and doesn't drain the team's resources.
That's quite clever. So you're keeping the framework of the old one, but you're adding a more modern twist to it that doesn't make it up to date as such, because you said that, you know, New Vegas isn't that old, but it's something that is recognizably different from the old game, but still has that charm and that feel that we all experienced with New Vegas.
Definitely.
So as a Fallout fan yourself, which in the series is your favourite entry and why? What facets of that chosen game have influenced your approach to Fallout 4 New Vegas?
Well, realistically, I have two answers, and that just comes down to, I suppose, the realities of the series and the way it's been broken up. Overall, Fallout 1 is my favorite game. I feel it's a very polished, very tight game, and I feel like all the systems and all of the narrative hooks are tied together in a very tight and focused way. In fact, that's actually why Fallout 2, I know a lot of people say Fallout 2 is the best game. It's a great game, it's a lot of fun, but it lacks the sort of narrative cohesion that Fallout 1 or New Vegas have. And overall, I would say New Vegas is probably my favorite Fallout game in the entire series, and certainly my favorite 3D Fallout game.
Just in terms of, because there is a big debate with a lot of people I talk to, between New Vegas and Fallout 3, and I think Fallout 3 was such a... because it was the first one by Bethesda from the original Interplay team, so it was this new step into their take on the universe. So I think Fallout 3 was remembered a lot by fans, and it was the takeaway. And of course, New Vegas is the spin-off by Obsidian. Why would you pick Fallout New Vegas over Fallout 3? But I'm with you on the same. I think New Vegas is the more superior one. But what personally makes you pick it above Fallout 3?
Well, New Vegas and Fallout 3 are fundamentally different games. Fallout 3 is a game that aims to be a light RPG with a semi-fluid story, we'll say. It is adaptive to a certain degree, and it's very tightly focused, but it's focused in such a way as to, let's say, almost be a caricature of itself in certain places. Whereas New Vegas is a deeply flawed game in a lot of ways. It's very buggy, and it has some underutilized systems, Karma, for example. However, I'm a big sucker for the older games, so Fallout New Vegas really does, I guess, sort of tap into that, you know, growing up with Fallout 1, Fallout 2, Fallout Tactics, Brotherhood of Steel, unfortunately. You oh man, I played it.
So I'd like to move on to modding in general, and with the continued controversy surrounding Bethesda, most recently surrounding the monetization of mods from their own mod hosting platform, what are your feelings on paid mods in general?
They're very mixed. I've been in the modding world for about a decade now. Yeah, that's about right. Geez.
It's a long time.
And paid mods keep coming up and keep coming up. And honestly, I don't think there's anything inherently bad about them. you look at modding teams going back to the 90s, you know, guys making Doom wads and then putting out packs for sale. You know, these guys were putting months, sometimes years, into these packages of levels. I don't really see where the issue is with them getting a financial recompense for that. However, I do feel that there has to be a certain level of, let's say, transparency with it. And I think there has to be a very clear honesty about what they're doing. And I also think it comes down to the relationship with the developer of the game they're working with.
Because at the end of the day, you're using someone else's source material. But I absolutely agree that people put their time, their money, well, their time, their money, and their effort into making these mods, and some of them are incredibly detailed. And you're spending hours upon hours of your life. Why shouldn't you get recompensated for that? Absolutely. I've got a question here from Hillel4350 on Twitter, and he says, you mentioned numerous times on your mods DB page and your Discord that you expect no monetary gain during the development process for any of the staff for Fallout 4 New Vegas. Will Fallout 4 New Vegas in the end be a paid mod, or will you be looking for monetary payback for it after the project is finished?
Absolutely none. Fallout 4 New Vegas is a free project by the community for the community, and money doesn't come into it.
It's a passion project.
100%.
Wonderful. That is wonderful. Have you had any direct contact with Bethesda or Obsidian Entertainment? And if so, how have they received the project?
Well, we've been in contact, very limited, with Bethesda, and that was mostly just to lay out the whole, you know, hey, we're doing this thing with your IP, please don't sue us.
Yeah.
And we've had some communication with Obsidian. Obsidian's reaction has been public. There was a tweet that went out, I want to say 2 weeks ago now, where they just let out a single little, see if I can pull it up here, but no, they just basically said, how about that Fallout 4 New Vegas mod?
Little shout out for you guys.
Yep.
That must be, I'm guessing you're a long-term fan of Obsidian, so that must have been quite cool to get that recognition from people you obviously sort of admire for their long history of RPG games.
Certainly.
So how big is the team overall, and what previous experience have you guys had in the past with modding? You've talked about your personal experience for almost a decade, so what mods have you come from, and so yeah, what is your past?
Complicated. I've been all over the place. I've worked on, or contributed I should say, on a conversion of Command & Conquer Renegade. Command & Conquer Red Alert: A Path Beyond. It was a first-person shooter based around the old original Command & Conquer Red Alert. They're still alive and kicking. It's a multiplayer competitive shooter. It's actually really good.
Oh, Jesus.
Geez, what else? I've dabbled with Kerbal Space Program in the past. I've dabbled with Homeworld 2. Geez. Going back even farther, had some involvement with, jeez. I'm digging now, because it's just you start doing...
going back 10 years, so that's, yeah. that's quite a while.
Before that, I would have actually been doing mods for Command & Conquer Generals, and was also doing some Battlefield 2 modding, because, man, Battlefield 2 is a good time.
So, personally, what do you feel about... You talk passionately about modding, and you've got a long, varied history in it. What do you feel, in general, about modding, and what importance does it have in the world of modern-day gaming?
Well, modding is... It's kind of a very personal thing, ultimately. For me, it's always been just about self-improvement, and about making things that don't exist because I want them. Which, I know, selfish, but I mean, you look at it, ultimately, modding is a very selfish act that happens to benefit a lot of other people in a lot of great ways. And that's not to say modders are inherently selfish, it's just that what they're doing is for themselves at the end of the day. And in the world of gaming itself, I think it plays two really important roles. One, it really drives communities, because when you can mod a game, you're going to be pulling in people who want to make things that other people are going to want too. The other big thing it does is it pulls people into the games industry, and gets people a sort of entry level that is low risk compared to, say, throwing everything away and trying to get a job that might ultimately fall through or not be for you.
It gives you experience, and it doesn't force you into a role that might be dictated by other people, because there are a lot of game developers that manage to get into these big companies, and then they, especially with EA these days, they end up working on crap throwaway games that the publisher wants them to make. So you describe modding as sort of a selfish outlet, but it's a selfish outlet that ultimately people benefit from, because it's a passion project, and when people share your passion for that game, you create something that's unique and enjoyable and interesting that other people can enjoy. So that's incredibly admirable.
Certainly.
Now you fielded all my questions, and thankfully we can get to some Twitter questions, so take some of the pressure off me. The first question comes from Nintendo_addict on Twitter. Will you guys look to improve on New Vegas' flaws, or leave them as they were to preserve the original feel of the game? Whether he means the glitches or just the basic things that people didn't enjoy. What are you planning to leave, and what are you planning to remove to improve the feel of the game itself?
Well, I regret to inform all of our devoted fans that Doc Mitchell will not require an exorcism in this installation of the Fallout series, unfortunately.
No.
We're really aiming to clean up a lot of the flaws of the original game. I mean, a lot of us are willing to say that Fallout New Vegas is a very flawed game, and instead of sitting there belaboring it, we try to find solutions. And we also take a lot of inspiration from Fallout 4 for that. For instance, power armor is basically metal pajamas in New Vegas. At the end of the day, that's all it is. Fallout 4's power armor system, aside from the issues with, needing fusion cells for them, it's basically perfect. It's dead on. It feels real good, and it's loads of fun to play with. So that's something that we're going to be bringing forward, we're going to be playing off of and using for our work. We're also going to be taking care of a lot of the weird sort of broken stuff that made various builds more, say, viable than others, and we're also going to try making other builds more viable. That's, for example, the bow, making a survival build more useful. We're shifting certain weapon skills around and trying to rebalance things to feel a lot more, I suppose a good way to put it is just feel better for people who want to put the time into making weird character builds.
Because I remember that with Fallout New Vegas, is that you would play the game several times with different builds. You do a stealth build, or you do a heavy weapons build, or an energy weapons build. And I always remember going either unarmed or melee combat, and it being achingly difficult, but just a ton of fun. So it'd be nice to have that rebalance, so that every build is just as viable, but you still got that same amount of fun, and you've got different ways to approach situations, which would be really refreshing for people who like to try everything out. So that is wonderful. From a friend, he wanted me to ask this question, and trying to not make this as rude as he made it sound. For such an ambitious mod, how driven are you as a team to see its completion?
Well, I'll put it this way. At any given minute, we have a fairly large team. And you look, there is almost always something going on. Somebody working on something, or tweaking something, or finding solutions to problems, or creating new problems to find solutions to. And I can't really say, I'm not a mind reader, I can't say, oh, that man right there, he's so driven that he would pull a cart up a hill for 8 miles to see Fallout 4 New Vegas finished. But I can say, realistically, that these people have come together to work together, and just the amount of effort they put into their work, and the way that they keep coming back day after day after week after month, tells me that the team as a whole is very driven.
Which is absolutely wonderful. You guys are very, as you mentioned before, transparency during modding processes is very important, and you guys are incredibly transparent, and you give constant updates, which is so refreshing to see. And the buzz the community has for the project already, especially with all the news outlets coming out about it, and the screenshots, which are, may I say, absolutely incredible, with the new sort of lighting effects that you guys have implemented from Fallout 4. It's great to see that, and I guess the the constant community buzz, and some may call it hype, but hopefully people will show some amount of patience. That must be an inspiration for you guys as a team to see so many people so interested and talking about because the Discord server is populated to no end. All these people supporting you. That must be a constant drive for your team to continue on this what must be a long project production path.
Yeah. I suppose we look at it two ways, and we kind of have to. On one hand, we are just so incredibly humbled by the number of people who reach out and just offer just kind words or offer money or pictures of dogs to us, and it's just incredible. On the other hand, we try to temper that because I guess there's a certain air around Fallout New Vegas that, you know, draws people to it because a lot of people have a lot of love for the game. But I really do think that we're trying to sort of show that we're not just a team of people trying to ride off the hype. We're trying to showcase this to people, almost, I guess, so as to earn the trust of a community. Because, as it is right now, we're coming off a team that spent 6 months and fell apart. We're coming into a modding, I guess, atmosphere where this has been tried, it has not succeeded, and so there's a certain, I guess, we'll call it cautious optimism we're trying to field in regards to this kind of stuff.
To move on from that, a friend asked me, and he's a big lover of this character, as am I. After seeing the Veronica updated design, which I'll probably be flashing up on the screen here, or include links in some way, how's Boone going to look in the mods? Are you guys going to try and make him look more badass somehow, or what's your plans for him?
At the moment, we have nothing concrete. See, our art team, to a certain degree, does their own thing on the side, especially concept artists who are doing designs up for characters, because they have a little more space to work on what they want to. Meanwhile, the rest of the team, we're trying to maintain a very laser focus on specific chunks of the world space. Right now, it's just Goodsprings and the area around Goodsprings. And I know people say, well, you know, you've been working on that for so long. Yes, but we're trying to get it right the first time around. So, as a result, Boone hasn't been touched yet, which is, actually, as an aside, kind of ironic. The original team that developed New Vegas actually started in Novac. So, the fact that we're moving in a totally different route, I suppose, is kind of interesting. But,
we built around how the game moves around Goodsprings first, and then and then out from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense design-wise because Novac has a little bit of every single game system implemented into it. So they were able to sort of proof of concept everything before they moved out and built everything else. Since we're sort of trying to take cautious steps to build assets first and foremost, that means we're taking a more player-oriented route.
In terms of this just sprung to mind. In terms of how you're designing it and the pacing you're designing it at, you said you started with Goodsprings. Further down the line, I just thought you're going to have to move on to obviously the Vegas Strip sooner or later. In terms of the difference between the two worlds is massive compared to, you know, the lights and the glow and the huge buildings of the Vegas Strip compared to the humble, quaint beginnings of Goodsprings. Are you guys foreseeing that is going to be quite the hurdle to get over?
Yes, it's definitely going to be a huge hurdle. One of the things we're sort of playing with right now, and, you know, this isn't any specific promises or outlines of things we're definitely doing, but there's a lot of new systems and a lot of changes in the creation engine that enable us to do things that could not be done with Fallout New Vegas. We also don't need to contend with weaker console architectures, which means that we have a little more latitude in the kind of stuff we can get away with. So, while we're not really devoting a whole lot of resources to it, even at this early stage, we're still sitting down and sort of saying, you know, here are some things we can do, here are some quick proof of concept tests of things X, Y, and Z, and we're sort of, I guess, preempting the struggle.
A question from @thatdearguy, again on Twitter. What will the installation process for Fallout 4 New Vegas likely be?
Well, here's the thing. We're using the audio from Fallout New Vegas because, believe it or not, we're not crazy enough to record 50-plus hours of dialogue. So, As a result, we require from anybody who wants to install Fallout 4 New Vegas a legal installation of Fallout New Vegas with all of the DLC. So, to install Fallout 4 New Vegas, you also need Fallout 4 and all its DLC. So, here's how the installation's mapped out to probably work. You'll have to install Fallout 4 and get its DLC installed. Then you'll have to install Fallout New Vegas and get all its DLC installed. Then you can run an installer that will be packaging with the mod that will extract the needed audio assets from Fallout New Vegas, and then create a packed file in your Fallout 4 directory so that our mod can access and use those files as we need them.
So that comes on to a later question. So Mr525 mentions that from one of your blog posts that you have replaced some of the gun sounds. And he asked, do you plan on replacing the main voice cast with your own? You've already said that you're going to be keeping all of all the dialogue files. Will you be adding any new dialogue, or have you just planned to just take the old dialogue and just move it straight over?
Well, early on, we actually seriously had a big discussion about this. We talked about how some of the voice acting in New Vegas isn't the best. There's some, I don't know if there was direction issues or something, but some of the deliveries are just really lacking. However, the fact of the matter is to create a single NPC. Let's say I sit down, I want to make a new NPC, okay? So I sit down, and I find a voice actor. I now have to sit down with a script and get them to record over 100 lines of dialogue. Okay, so they've done 100 lines of dialogue. Now, we're ignoring the fact that I had to get them to a recording studio and set them up with hundreds of dollars of recording equipment. I now have to take and sit down and master those voice files, make sure no additional takes are needed, probably record 3 or 4 extra takes because something went wrong, and then sit down and get those all in-game implemented and attached to the NPC, and we now have a character that you can't even talk to. We're talking about somebody who has the basic reactions, and that's it. So, to start replacing characters would be just an inordinate amount of work. That's just, we'd be focusing so much attention on that, we'd not be making New Vegas anymore. I guess it's important to remember, New Vegas held the world record for most lines of dialogue in a game.
Jesus Christ, then that's a lot to replace. There was a mention of in that Twitter conversation that the lines, or at least the audio, was quite poor quality. But I never felt that way with New Vegas. I agree that the delivery wasn't particularly great, but I never thought that the audio was poor quality. That won't be a problem for your team, will it? The audio files seem to be decent enough for the project.
I won't lie, there is some compression on there, and if you're an audio snob like myself, you're going to sit down and listen to it and go, what is that? But that's actually an interesting problem, because if we went through and started redoing a few of the characters, their audio would not be as compressed and would actually sound better by comparison than everybody else, and so it would be out of place.
It just wouldn't fit with the rest of them, yeah. I can see how that could be a problem.
Yeah. So, regardless, we think the quality's high enough.
That's fair enough. That's good news for you guys. You won't have to record all of that dialogue. It's just, I didn't realise there was that much. I didn't realise it held the world record. That's absolutely crazy.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because
when you consider games like Mass Effect, which is just known for long dialogue trees, that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's mad.
Yeah. The next question comes from @Mazomise? Masomise? Something like that. What's the hardest part of the project, and how will you overcome it? And do you plan on asking for any assistance from the community in terms of helping with the mod?
Well, really, that's a departmental thing. For instance, animations. There is a huge problem with Fallout 4 right now that people are trying to tackle, and the initial steps have been taken by the Fallout Cascadia project, and they have announced that they seem to have cracked it. However, information's been slow on that. We don't have much on it, and we're still trying to work out our own implementations for it, because making custom behaviors based on animations and animating stuff like new creatures right now is incredibly difficult. So that's a big stumbling block for a project like ours, where we're adding new creatures to the game. Meanwhile, for instance, on the scripting front, we have to worry about dozens upon dozens upon dozens of quests that are all interrelated and that can all break each other at any given time. And then you have the assets team who have to worry about populating a world with stuff that they're making from scratch. Fallout New Vegas has something like 150 weapons, I think. And that's ignoring variants. So, like, Rat Slayer isn't counted in that.
Unique weapons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have piles of stuff to get through.
No, I can... Yeah, it sounds like an absolutely humongous undertaking. Coming on to that point, and a question that was asked a lot, and it's not one I particularly want to ask. Again, I like the virtue of patience, but I can see why people are asking. At Jib Monkey is worried he won't be able to play the mod tomorrow. I'm assuming completed. Realistically, how long do you think this project will take?
Man, honestly, to put a number on it right now, I couldn't. It's very early days, and a lot of what we're doing could be done in an easier, less effective way. So a lot of our work is about finding the best possible solution. You also have to keep in mind that a lot of what we're doing goes beyond just, you know, saying, well, let's take the numbers from Fallout New Vegas, slap them into Fallout 4, and it's good to go. Because of the way Fallout 4 plays, it's just fundamentally different from New Vegas. The combat is better, and it's totally different in the way it handles. The AI is different, and while we can tweak it to play a bit more like New Vegas, we're not going to because it's better. Stuff like that means that we're, for all intents and purposes, making a brand new game as we go. Something that we kind of like to reiterate to people is it took Obsidian a team of 75 full-time developers, and that this includes things like writers, for example, because that doesn't really factor into what we're doing. It took them 18 months to make New Vegas. We have a team of volunteers, so we're going to need time.
Yeah, and that's absolutely understandable. So at Dwevi_ asks, how do you determine what to create next for the mod? Is it a group discussion or a bunch of solo efforts that are added together? What is your overall approach, step by step?
Well, our project has a very clear-cut chain of command. It's kind of necessary for a project of this scale. So we have myself, Wanamingo, and Nakio-san, the three project heads. We sort of sit down and lay out the overall roadmap for development, discuss it, work out where we think we should go, and set some loose-cut landmarks for what we should be aiming for. Then we take that down to our project leads. These are people who are going to be taking care of individual departments within the overall development team. Our number of leads is currently hovering around, you know, about 24. And that's sort of the core top-level team. Now, they will discuss with us to sort of work out a plan of attack for the goals we've laid, and then they will go down to the other contributors on the project and sort of guide them towards goals that we need for our next milestone. This is a creative endeavor, so we can't just say, hey, you, yeah, guess what you're making next? It doesn't work like that. Nobody wants to be treating anything that's like a job. Like, you know, if they wanted to do that, they'd get paid to do what they're good at, because these people are good at what they do. So instead, we just try to guide them towards what we need, and if people, you know, take some time to work on personal stuff, or they're really busy with work, whatever, that's not a big deal. This team, above all else, is about working together, and it's about self-improvement. So we really just focus on trying to get people where we need them and letting them find their own way there.
I think that's a brilliant approach to it as well, because you're giving people their own creative freedoms to do what they need within the constraints of what you ask for, and I think that's a great way of keeping the project fresh without approaching it, as you said, as a job, really, that you're shackled down to. The next question is from @AlexDC Tilemans. Do you plan on casting a courier voice as Fallout 4 did with the Sole Survivor? We've spoken in great length on voice acting, but Fallout 4 was the first Fallout game, to my knowledge, or at least the first 3D Fallout game to give the protagonist a voice, at least an audible one. Do you guys plan on bringing that into New Vegas with the courier, or is he going to be kept mute? she going to be kept mute?
I was of two minds on this. On one hand, there is some absolutely fantastic dialogue in Fallout New Vegas that hearing somebody actually say would just be mind-blowing good fun.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm not sure I can find somebody crazy enough to be chained to a desk to record all the lines of dialogue the courier has.
I think as we've mentioned before, it's a big undertaking with the amount of dialogue there is. So that's completely understandable that someone would have to work solid to be able to fill all those lines, especially with the multiple dialogue options that the courier has. I could not imagine it.
Yeah.
The next question is from I should have read these names. At Skieza1788. Skieza1788. What's been the most memorable part of working on this project, good or bad?
That's a good question. I mean, we're early on, so this is probably going to change, but I will say, getting that first gameplay preview out about 2 weeks ago, not the reaction, but just getting it out there and knowing that people are finally seeing what we've been working on, and people are finally able to say, hey, these guys aren't just making cool desktop backgrounds for us. It's a big relief in a lot of ways. It's just like, hey, we did something.
Yeah.
And
you can put something physical to your efforts.
Yeah, and being able to see everybody's work just come together, and seeing the efforts of, tons of people culminate, even in just a tiny, tiny glimpse of what we're working on, that feels really good.
Finally, as a selfish question, will you guys make this mod absolutely perfect by simply not including the track Johnny Guitar?
Actually, we've made a fantastic design decision. We're going to be stripping out all of the music in the game, and then we're going to be carefully replacing it, all with Big Iron.
Brilliant. Perfect. That's all it needs. That's all the old New Vegas needs.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely everything. I'm out of questions, and I've taken up 42 minutes of your time, so I plan not to take any more. Thank you so much, Meta. This has been really eye-opening, and it's incredible to get an insight as to how hard you guys are working, and modding in general. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Plug away.
Two big things I just want to fire a plug out for. Firstly, if anybody wants to see and watch what we're doing, one of our big places for updates is our Facebook. You can find that by just looking up Fallout 4 New Vegas on Facebook. It should get you to us. The other big thing I want to offer a shout out to is our friends over at the Capital Wasteland project. They're remaking Fallout 3, also in the Fallout 4 creation engine. They've been at it longer than we have, and man, has the work they've done just... It's incredible. It's really good. And you should be watching and following what they're doing. You can also find them on Facebook, and you'll be able to track that over on the Road to Liberty's mods page on Facebook.
Both those links I will be including in the description below. Please go read the description and check them out. As Meta said, that they're both worth a follow if you're interested in Fallout 4 New Vegas or the Capital Wasteland mod. But I think that's all for now. As I said, once again, thank you so much, Meta, for joining me.
Not a problem.
And good night, I guess.